Good evening, one and all. It's my proud privilege to organize this session for all of you. Would like to introduce briefly our today's speaker, the great CMA Harshad Deshpande sir. Sir is a MCOM fellow member of Cost and Management Accountant, also member of Company Secretary, CISA from US, CIMA from UK, IP Insolvency Professional, Register Valuation, Register Valuer, and also Independent Director. Sir is a member in many different committees of the institute and also of other forum. Sir is also a chairman of IP Foundation Pune. Also member of Indirect Tax Committee of IMC Chamber of Tax Consultant. Sir is great in the technology as well as academic and training, management accountant and insolvency. Sir is written many article in various publication, including WRC of ICAI of Cost and Management Accountant. With this brief introduction, would like to give a session handed over to CMA Harshad Deshpande sir. Sir, it's we have a great session of this registered valuer, and for the benefit of all members, all professional, for the examination point of view as well. With this, would like to give handover to Harshad Deshpande sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Virag, for nice introduction, as well as I must thank you that you are taking such a very good initiative during this difficult time to organize the sessions which are useful for the professions. So, friends, I'm sure that everybody is at home, so as me. So you can see just my background, much colorful than any office atmosphere. So just kindly excuse me, if any of my family members by chance it can disturb. So for that, my apologies in advance. So friends, we are going to discuss this topic of registered valuer and the valuation under the different statutes. So before we start, I just I've prepared one PPT. So at the background, you will see some of the names of the company. IBM, P&G, or Colgate. We know all these companies, right? So you must have been seeing lots of quiz call these days because of lockouts. And so my question to you is that what means IBM? What we know that company is as, but originally what was the business of the IBM? Originally, what was the business of the P&G, or what was the Colgate? What was doing? So if you could go back, IBM was very it's now giant company, but when it started, it was in their business was not to make the computers because computers were not invented. So they were making this weighing machines and time scales and releasing of certain machinery. P&G, there is a very interesting story about P&G. The P&G's original business was they used to make and sell candles. So what happened was that during this second revolution, rather this industrial revolution, this electricity got invented. So the moment this electricity got invented by this another than great Thomas Alva Edison, so the P&G called urgent board meeting, and they know that they were going to be out of business of the candles. So they thought what we should do. So they entered into the FMCG segment, and we know them more as a FMCG big giant FMCG player, and nobody talks about what they started with. You will be very interesting to know that Colgate, it doesn't start with toothpaste. Yes, I'm right. That Colgate, the original business of the Colgate was they were manufacturing soaps. Later on, they ventured into toothpaste, and we know what this brand is all about now. Same is the story with the Nokia. Nokia was never a mobile manufacturer. It was basically having a pulp and paper factory. But today we know Nokia by what you know better. Same is the case with the Apple. Apple was in the business of trading of computers. In fact, they used to sell this personal computers in early 80s. And we know what the Apple is in business today. It's more of a technology giant. The Indian counterpart, like for example, Wipro. We know that Wipro, the original business of the Wipro was basically into the refined oils and vegetables. So we know today the Wipro as more as a technological giant. So let's talk about also some persons. This person, now famous actor. So not few years before, he was working as in one of the big restaurants in Mumbai. Not more than maybe 15, 20 years back. Same is the case with this gentleman. He's an IIM graduate and he's doing the cricket commentary, but uh, we know him more as a cricket commentator than IIM professional, isn't it? And this gentleman he's a computer engineer, but we know as a famous bowler and now famous coach who is making. So what is the relevance of that to these sessions? If anybody can ask me, the point I wanted to make is that many of you may not be in the business of valuation, never would have done a valuation, or never would have thought that what this valuation is all about. So the point here I wanted to make, that these are some of the examples which started with something else and they ended with something else. So you never know that where is the hidden story lies. So even if many of you are not having any reference with the valuation field, but days to come, of course, there could be a very big opportunity, and perhaps some of you can find a career in this field of valuation. So with this background, I would like to start these sessions. Uh, what is a valuation? The valuation denotes the value of underlying asset as on a particular day. So valuation means a value. So first of all, let me clarify. Many times we use this concept, or rather interchangeably use this concept of value versus price versus cost. Do remember that these three things are different. So value denotes something much more different than what we generally look at, the price or any cost involved with it. Also, would like to mention that this is particularly as on a particular frame of time. So many times this question is that, sir, we have to we have to do certain transactions. We are having a valuation report which was just taken 1 year back. So can we use it? Okay. So valuation, in fact, you will see that it is at a particular point of time. So if there is any change in the situation, any scenario, you will see that the valuation is going to have an impact. Just imagine that somebody, take the example of any company. You take, for example, Reliance, what it was there today on 31st of March, and maybe a month back. You will see that there is a drastic change in the valuations that happens because of the existence of the time. So it is required for critical business decisions such as fundraising. So today, if I want to raise a funds, first things the fund providers, may it be the equity providers or the debt providers, they will ask me that what is your valuation. So if you want to approach a bank, the first thing they will ask you is the valuation report, because based on that they are going to determine what is going to be your limits. Same is the case with the equity borrowers. If you approach any investor or you approach any private equity firm, the first thing they are going to ask you is that show me what is the valuation you are looking at. M&A, mergers and acquisitions. In fact, valuation is a trigger for any M&A transactions. So because somebody finds value in some other company, or rather finds that the price offered is attractive enough, or it is much more than the value uh, it denotes, then perhaps there is a trigger. And because of the existence of over under valuation, you will see that the M&A transactions do happen. So valuation is most important in any M&A transactions, either buy side or may it be from the sell side. Sell, liquidation of business. Suppose I want to sell my business, or liquidate my business, or liquidate a division, or a particular stream of operations. So for that, I need to know the value so that I can put it to the auction, or I can ask for a certain price. Strategic business decisions as a family or shareholder disputes. Uh, uh, just some years back, there was a division of this Reliance Group into these two brothers. So what was the basis for that? Who should take what? So that is basically nothing but based on the valuations what were there at that point of time. Voluntary value assessment. Sometimes the management themselves want to know that where they are. So that is sometimes needed, that where you stand in order to make certain policy decisions. So voluntary value assessment is also one of the purposes to do the valuations. or it may be to comply certain regulatory or accounting requirements in India. For example, under RBI there is or FEMA there is a requirement for valuation. Income tax requires the valuations. Company Act has a provisions pertaining to the valuation. SEBI laws has a valuation provisions. You will see that in GST there is a there are valuation rules are there. So everywhere you look at the stamp duty, there is a provisions of valuation. Based on that valuation, you are going to pay the stamp duty. So the statutory requirements also make you do this valuations. Better corporate governance, the requirement of the independent business valuations, the companies like Infosys, who are basically a technology company, they are showing the valuation of their human resources as a part of their voluntary disclosure for many years. The thing is that they want to showcase that what the company really stands for, because in traditional accounting system what we show in the balance sheet is the value of the book value of the assets, whereas in technological company the assets are not only pertaining to the tangible assets, but there are intangible assets like human resources, the copyrights or the intellectual know-how. So these are the things which perhaps fetch more value. So that is why they have given this in the form of voluntary disclosures. Now, valuation itself is evolving. Trade is evolving. You look at this valuation standards. These are being this IVS, International Valuation Standards. It was being formed in 1980s. So whereas as compared to accounting started way back in 1960s or 50s, you recollect. So it's an evolving field not only within India but also internationally. It's an inexact science requiring both objectivity as well as subjectivity. You will see that the valuation requires the numbers, but also it requires a lot of subjectivity in order to assess the right potential of the business and where it could have gone. So as it involves the subjectivity, so the professional judgment of the valuer is thus critical in order to make the valuation exercise more meaningful. So that is why perhaps the one of the parameters what should be chosen for selecting the valuer is the experience. Experience here I do not say that experience in number of years, but experience in terms of number of assignments then. Because what happens is that more and more assignments you do, you get acumen of what the numbers are looking at. Typically, suppose if you are doing an evaluation of a startup, so in that case, somebody who has done such exercise earlier, he has got a better understanding of the business, and he is in a better position to judge where he stands, because everybody has a very big story. Everybody would like to become a unicorn, and they have the numbers, because ultimately it's a forecast. So forecast can be anything. So one has to have a good professional judgment in order to become a very good valuer. Do remember that valuer has to be very objective, and the valuation both sides is not good. If you go on the higher side, that is also a problem. If your valuation on your undervalued asset, that is also going to be a task, and there is a strong regulator, which is IBBI. So that is why it's very important that you should do this valuation exercises more scientifically and within the legal and standards framework. Lack of Indian valuation standards. So till date, you will see that there are no Indian valuation standards. In fact, you will see that there are so many practices which are being followed. You can see there are so many valuers who proclaim to be a government approved valuer, or valuers which are specifically property valuers. You will see that. So there is absence of any regulatory authority to control, guide, and develop the practice of valuation in India. So there was no regulator. The certain laws, they were given authorities to set of valuers to do a particular valuations. For example, some of the jewelers, they were assigned to do the valuation of jewelry, but you will see that they disclose as we are the certified valuers. So perhaps that is the not the right way to disclose the what you stand for. So there was a absence of any regulatory framework. The different valuers have been taken different assumptions leading to the drastic differences in the value conclusions. So as there are no standards or any regulator, you will see that the valuations were driven largely by the person who is giving you the assignments. So it can lead to a drastic differences in the value conclusions. And you will see that the problem what we are facing is of NPA. You will see that this all where this funding was done based on certain reports, valuation reports, or the TEV, techno-economic viability reports. And you can just play around with certain assumptions, and you can perhaps get a value what the management or your client may want to have. In many cases, the valuation also lacks uniformity and generally accepted global valuation practices. So this was the background under which the valuation field or valuation domain was there, typically in India. So the valuation first was brought under the Companies Act 2013. So the concept of the registered valuer was brought by this Companies Act 2013 in the form of Chapter 17, that is to regulate the practice of valuation in India and standardize the valuation in line with the international standards. However, although this Companies Act was this provision was notified, but however this qualifications, experience, and manner and process were not prescribed in that. In fact, the Act said that it will be as may be prescribed. So as may be prescribed means there has to be a set of rules which will be giving this the qualification, experience, and manner and process. So it was not being notified. So even though Companies Act was being notified, but these provisions were not made effective. The recent developments, recent also means recent in 2013. So this MCA has notified these provisions governing this registered valuer, and that is Section 247 of the Companies Act. And also they have released this Companies Registered Valuer and Valuation Rules 2017. Both came into effect from 18th October 2017. So you'll see that it's just hardly 2 years this profession has emerged. In addition to administer and perform the functions under the said rules, MCA by way of a notification on 23rd of October 2017 has specified the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India as a responsible authority. So that is by virtue of this notification dated 23rd of October 2017, the government has delegated powers to IBBI. So that is why you will see that this IBBI is the regulator for this domain of registered valuer. Now, eligibility. The following person shall be eligible to become the registered valuer: a chartered accountant, company secretary, or a cost accountant who is in whole-time practice, a retired member of Indian Corporate Law and Service, or any Indian citizen holding equivalent Indian or foreign qualifications as the Ministry of Corporate Affairs may an order recognize. So as of now, they have not recognized anybody. So any CA, CMA, or CS, he can become the registered valuer. A merchant banker registered with the SEBI and having in his employment a person having the qualification as mentioned above to carry the valuation services by such qualified persons. So merchant banker also can become the registered valuer, provided he has the persons who are having the qualifications as mentioned above. So there is also equal amount of opportunity for those who are in employment or who would like to have a career in the employment. So for them also this opportunity is there. A member of Institute of Engineers and who is in whole-time practice. Similarly, a member of Institute of Architects and who is in whole-time practice. So I will get back to you on this, why there is a need of engineers or architects to become the valuers. So there is a concept called as asset classes, which will be covered subsequently in my presentation. The 5 years of continuous post-membership experience is mandated in all above cases. Now, let's look at the provisions under which the valuation report from the registered valuer is required. So, this is about this Companies Act. There is a section which is 62(1)(c), which talks about the valuation report for further issue of shares. Typically, this section we are going by this preferential allotment of shares. So any company proposes to issue new shares except to the right issue or ESOP, the price of such shares should be determined by the valuation report of the registered valuer. So if a company want to do a further allotment of shares to for new shareholders, so in that case they have to obtain the valuation report. Now just look at this opportunity of this 62(1)(c). I mean the number of companies who are registered. So there are around, as I'm told, that there are 11 lakh companies. Okay, so 11 lakh companies are there. So let's discount them by 50%, saying that out of that, suppose 50% are operational. So let's take that 5 lakhs as the operating companies. So if a company want to allot a share, so if you just take suppose in 2 years time they would like to make the allotment. So in that case also, if you take the 6 lakhs number of companies and divide it by say 2 years or maybe 3 years, so still you will find that there are around 2 lakh of companies who would like to have a valuation report once a year. So as of now, if you look at the total number of valuers, the number is maybe less than 3,000 or 4,000 number of registered valuers are there. So you will see that there is a very disproportionate number of valuers which are available, and the requirement as if just we focus on the one section, that is 62(1)(c). So you will see that there is a wonderful opportunities there for the registered valuers. Section 2, this section 192(2), this talks about the valuation of assets involved in the arrangement of non-cash transactions involving the directors. So any sale or purchase of the assets of the company and the directors of the company, including the holding subsidiary or associate company, or a person connected with the directors for the consideration other than cash, the value of the asset has to be calculated by the registered value. Sometimes it happens, just to take an example, suppose a directors bring his goods into the company as inventory. So in that case, that transactions need to have the valuation which is done by the registered valuer under section 192(2). Sometimes it happens that a company or a director would like to bring in asset or maybe a land or property or technical know-how into the business, and against that he would like to have issued the shares. So such transaction also will fall under both section 192(2) as well as section 62(1)(c). So this is a very good opportunity. You will understand that is there for to registered values. Section 232 subclause C, point number 5, the valuation of shares, property, assets of the company under the scheme of CDR, so corporate debt restructuring. So in such cases, the valuation report has to be submitted, or it has to be taken from the registered valuer. But these days, this CDR mechanism is not so operative. Maybe a couple of years back, there were a lot of CDRs being, or SDR or S4A was done, but these days, such requirements have not there because of the invent of the IBC, and this CDR and SDR is being not being so popular these days and not being so actively practiced. Section 233, the valuation report along with the notice of creditors or shareholders under the scheme of compromise or arrangement. So in case of this, typically provisions triggers when you are doing any amalgamation or mergers. So in such cases, the valuation report has to be taken from the registered valuer, or if there is a merger, so in such cases there has to be a swap ratio report from the registered valuer. So swap ratio report means, just to give an example, that if one company, so there is a merger of this, suppose Dena Bank into this Bank of Baroda. So in such cases, that how many shares of Bank of Baroda will be allotted for the, suppose there is a ratio of 2:1. So for every 2 shares held in the Dena Bank, 1 share will be allotted of the Bank of Baroda. So that is what is called as a swap ratio report. So this is the example just I have given. So you have to either obtain the valuation report or a swap ratio report from the registered valuer as per this section 233, and in fact that you have to attach when you are doing this application to the NCLT to get this merger or amalgamation or any compromise between the members or shareholders. Then section 232 2D, So report of the expert with regard to the valuation would be circulated for the meeting of the creators or members. So in case of there is a compromise or arrangement between the creators or the members, so in such cases also that there is a valuation report has to be obtained, or a swap issue report has to be obtained from the registered value. Section 232(3)(h), the valuation report to be made by the tribunal for the exit opportunity for the shareholders of the transferor company. So under scheme of compromise, in case the transferor company is a listed company and transferee company is an unlisted company, so in such cases, the tribunal may ask that the valuation to be done, and the exit opportunity can be given to the transferor company. The valuation of the equity shareholders held by the minority shareholders under section 236(2). So in case a person acting in concert with the acquirer acquires 90% of more in the equity capital of the company, they can offer the minority shareholders the opportunity to acquire the minority shareholdings at the valuation which is determined by the registered valuer. And section 281(1), which talks about the valuation of the assets for the submission of report by the liquidator. So the valuation of the company, valuation of the assets of the company by the registered valuer is required in case of winding up, whether voluntary or otherwise. So in case of a liquidation, you need to have this valuation report from the registered valuer. So these are the 8 provisions. In fact, there are certain more provisions which perhaps you can. I will be sharing my link to my article also, in which I have listed all these various provisions. So other provisions, other statutes, for example, IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So under a company is under this CIRP or corporate.
Before we move to the other statute, there are a few questions, sir. If you
Yes,
can
sir.
read out question.
Yes, sir.
From the that question tag, you have to enlarge that, sir.
Eligibility of 3 years or 5 years. Okay, this is the one question. So I will take this it is covered in my subsequent presentation. So I will cover it.
Okay, there are many, sir. I mean, from starting, if you see now, around 4-5 questions are there. So if you can cover at last also, there is no problem. Just for your information, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for information. So I will cover that definitely. I will also try to see that how to see it in a bigger mode. So I will take that questions, no doubt about it.
You have to enlarge that left hand side mode.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, so let's complete this. I think some of these questions, what I'm saying is that I have answered in my PPT. So if I miss out that, I request Virag to you just at the end of session just to highlight it so that it can be taken for the benefit of all. Okay, so let's move on to this IBC. So under IBC, a company under CIRP, so you have to obtain this valuation report from the registered valuer. So there has to be 2 reports. They have to obtain the reports from 2 registered valuers. So any company under CIRP, so approximately there are roughly around 2,500 companies which are under CIRP provisions. So for that, at least 2 valuers are required. So you see that this number of sets of valuers is perhaps 5,000 only in case of IBC. Similarly, under SEBI regulations, this REIT or INVIT, so Real Estate Investment Trust or Infrastructure Investment Trust regulations 2016, it says that you have to get the valuation done from the registered valuer. And under SEBI regulations, they have defined that valuer means a person who is a registered valuer under section 247 of the Act. So you will see that days to come, this provisions of valuations are being aligned, and the other statutes will start recognizing this Companies Act valuer, registered valuer as a registered valuer to get the valuation under the different statutes. In fact, as of now, you will see that there are certain, rather I will go to the next slide. Now, as of now, you will see that the main 4 things which I have highlighted is that Companies Act, Income Tax, FEMA and SEBI law. And there are 4 professional registered valuer, merchant bankers, chartered accountants and cost accountants. So you will see that under Companies Act, only a registered valuer is recognized to do the valuation. Similarly, in case of Income Tax 1961, only a merchant banker is recognized to do a valuation. Of course, there are certain exceptions under which, you know, a chartered accountant also can do a valuation under income tax. But if you are going to go by DCF, they are recognized only the merchant banker. Whereas under FEMA, they have recognized a merchant banker, a chartered accountant, and a cost accountant to do the valuations. And under SEBI laws, they have recognized registered valuer and merchant bankers. So you will see that as of now, there is a need to alignment of all this. Perhaps one critical thing is that Companies Act and income tax. So and FEMA. So it has to be aligned in order to see to it that only one professionals can do the valuation, so which can reduce redundancies and duplication of work. So that is what the representation has been there to the government to align these provisions in order to save the cost for the industry and also do have an integrated approach towards the valuation. The appointment of valuers, who will appoint the valuers? The registered valuer will be appointed by the audit committee, or if there is no audit committee, so in such cases, it will be done by the board of directors of the company. In case the company is under insolvency proceedings, the registered valuer will be appointed by the insolvency resolution process. I just missed out one point under IBC is that just like the companies who are under CRP, that they have to do the two valuations. So similarly, if it goes subsequently for liquidation, so under liquidation regulation, again they have to do a valuation. So perhaps you will see that this the opportunities of valuations are 2 or 3 times in case of if the company is under the insolvency. In Companies Act also, if you are going off for winding up voluntary or otherwise, you have to take the valuation report from the registered valuer. So let me come to this question of, you know, what is the concept of asset class? So there are 3 asset classes which are being defined. The first asset class is the land and building. So the prescribed qualification is the graduate in the civil engineering, architecture or town planning of the recognized university. So if you are a graduate, you need to have a 5 years experience after completion of your course. If you are a postgraduate, so in that cases, you have to have 3 years of experience. Or there is a one provision, graduate in the discipline specified by the authority for RVO in its conditions of recognition, and postgraduate in the valuation of land and building or real estate from the recognized university. So for that, you have to have a 5 years of experience in discipline after completing the post graduation. So if you could recollect that who can become the registered valuer. So in that there was an architect. So you will see that this architect can do the valuation of the asset class which is called as a land and building. So if you are architect or a civil engineer, you can become the registered valuer, but for the asset class land and building. The second class is plant and machinery. So graduate in mechanical or electrical engineering with 5 years of experience. In fact, this streams of engineering, they have also issued a notification by virtue of it. They have recognized the other cadres of engineering also. So if you are a graduate, you have to have 5 years of experience. And if you are a postgraduate engineer, then in that case, you have to have 3 years of experience. Or a graduate in valuation of machinery and plant from the recognized university, and a postgraduate in the valuation of machinery and plant from the recognized university. So in such cases, 3 years of experience in discipline after completing the post graduations. So once you are having these prescribed qualifications, you can become the registered valuer of that particular asset class. And the third category is the securities or financial assets. So in cases graduate in any stream and or a member of the professional institutes, that is CS, CMA, CS, or the MBA or PGDM specialization in finance or postgraduate degree in finance. So if you are having that, you should having a 3 years of experience. And other graduates and postgraduates level qualification as may be prescribed by the authority, you have to have 5 years of experience. So professionals, if any chartered accountant, cost accountant, or company secretary is there, you need to have 3 years of post qualification experience. So that is good enough to you to qualify to become the registered valuer. And if you are going by the graduate route, I request, or MBA or PGDM route, I request you to be more careful, because IBBA is a very strong regulator. You will see on the website of IBBA, there are so many cases that after being qualified the examination, they have rejected the application for getting registered as a registered valuer on the grounds of that qualification is not meeting the criteria. So one has to be very careful about the the qualifications. So valuation examination, that is under Rule 5, the authority shall either on its own or through a designated agency, that is IBBI, conduct the valuation examination for one or more asset classes. So this exam is there for all the asset classes. So 3 asset classes will have a 3 separate examination, 3 separate syllabus, and 3 separate the registration numbers. For the individuals who possess the required qualification and experience, so one has to have the required qualifications and experience as specified under Rule 4, and have completed their educational courses as the member of the registered valuer organization to test their professional knowledge, skills, values, and ethics in respect of valuations. So this is very important that you may have the eligibility or the qualification and experience, but before you appear the examination, you have to complete the mandatory training under RVO. So once you have done the training under this RVO, then only you are allowed to appear for the examinations. So once you have enrolled for this RVO training, make sure that it's a mandatory training under this valuation. So there are certain organizations called as RVO. RVO is the Registered Valuer Organizations. So you can see on the IBBI portal, there are certain valuers which are recognized to carry out this educational courses. So you have to enroll for these courses. They will be giving you a membership number, and thereafter you have to complete the training, and thereafter you will be issued a certificate for completion of your educational courses. You have to upload this on the portal of this IBBI then in order to schedule your examinations. So it is very important to complete the educational courses. Because of this situation, this IBB has allowed that RVOs can track the trainings online. So there are certain RVOs which are providing the trainings online. You can attend the webinars or attend the training sessions online on your computers, and you can complete this training during this lockout days. So that will be one more very good avenue to you to complete, because as a professional we are always busy, either whether in practice or in surveys, we don't have any time. So if the time is there, I request all of you to utilize this time in order to make you better equipped for the changing world. Everybody is aware that this COVID is not going to just have a temporary impact, but there will be impact both for the people who are working as well as the professionals. So you should have more and more ammunition into your bag in order to change, or in order to be adaptable to the situations what you will be facing after this lockout. So be geared up for it, and be vigilant enough that the world is going to change definitely after this lockout periods, and every such pandemic has always resulted into a recession or a depression or a slowdown. So be geared up for that. I request professionals to be very much take this. You must be reading the various reports which are being published by a lot of consulting firms. So in short, one need to possess not only the required qualification and experience as mentioned above, but also need to pass the examination for a particular asset class. So once you are having the qualification and experience, you have to take the training. After the training, you have to appear for the examination for a particular asset class. So it may be possible that some of the people who are engineers and also CA or CMAs, so they can appear for both to become the registered valuer for the 2 categories asset classes, the financial assets, securities or financial assets, or as well as for the plant and machinery. So it is possible, but for that you have to take the separate educational courses. You have to have the separate examinations. Valuation examination, why to hurry? So basically, as I told you that this situation is there, and of course there is a mismatch of the numbers between what is available as a registered valuers and the requirement of the industry. So there lies a very good opportunity. The exam getting tougher day by day. So you can just ask anybody who has appeared for the examination recently. You will see that this exam is really getting tougher day by day. The pattern of the examination, or these complexities, or there is a case study which has been given to solve. So the complexity or this case studies are becoming tougher day by day. So those who have passed early, and if you give them opportunity to appear again, perhaps they will say that I will not take it. So it's going really tough day by day. And it is going to get tougher day by day. That is also very much clear. The new rules, regulation, notifications are expected. So what happens is that as the professions, it's just 2.5 years old profession. So as the things go on maturing, you will see that there are a lot of rules, regulations, notifications, circulars which are being coming. So once it comes, that becomes part of your studies. So your examination content, it increases. So obviously it results into more efforts, and as more efforts are required, you have to devote more and more time. So it's better to pass it as early as possible. Early bird benefit, of course, there is a very big early bird benefit of the disproportionate number of registered valuers available vis-a-vis the opportunities. So those who have passed early, in fact, I was one of the first batch professionals who passed early, and definitely the situation was very different at point of time. So I request, it's not that too old a profession or not too old, too time has lapsed. So I request everybody that still there is a early time to enter this world of valuation. So what are the steps? The steps are, first of all, you do schedule your mandatory training, because without that you are not allowed to appear for the examinations. So complete your mandatory training, take admission to these courses and complete it. So generally the fees are in the range of 25,000 to 35,000 rupees for per training, including and plus GST. These trainings are being organized by various RVOs, the CA, CMA or CSA, PVAI, IOV. So these are some of the RVOs who are doing valuation courses. And as I said, that there are online is also possible to do this course. So you do it as early as possible. And this, don't look at the fees, because that's not just fees, that's your investment what you are looking at. And this investment perhaps is a very meager as compared to what kind of returns you can expect in days to come. Then keep following IBBF for the website for the examination, because as of now they have stopped because although it's a computer based examination, but you have to appear at the centers. So as of now the centers are not available, so that is why this examination cannot be scheduled during this lockout days. But soon, once this is over, in the meantime you can complete your trainings and be geared up for the examination. So once it is there, I request that you should enroll and schedule your examination as early as possible. Because once many time it happens that people think that, okay, first I will study, thereafter I will schedule the examination. So it goes on dragging. You keep on delaying the things what should have been done earlier, and after some years you get a feeling that I would have done it earlier. Now there is no time. So that is how the mentality of any human being is there. So I request, don't waste your time and schedule your examination, and that is going to be a very good start for you to prepare for the examination. Also I request that it's a very difficult examination. You will see that pass rates are very less amongst the professionals. The pass rates were earlier 17%, now it has dropped down to 13%. Sometimes it was 11%. So it's a difficult examination. So one cannot expect to pass in the first attempt. So you have to, of course, some of you who may be very intelligent can pass at first attempt, but generally it takes number of attempts. So you have to schedule your examination in order to consider the time for passing also. The material, download the Act, rules, regulations. This RVO websites also provides a lot of materials. You can do that. The study, there are a lot of good books which are available online, also in the form of this Kindle mode, or PDFs are available. So as far as the material is concerned, you should not be worried much about that. So this content would be available to you as of now also. So you can prepare yourself to become the registered valuer. So these are the steps. Valuer as a profession. So there is a rule 18 which talks about the valuation standards. So central government shall notify and may modify from time to time the valuation standards on the recommendations of the committee set up under Rule 19. So already a committee has been set up to uh, uh, to have this valuation standard in place, and this committee would be soon notifying this valuation standard which has to be followed by the registered valuer. So again, once this standards come in, that will become the part of the syllabus, and you have to have thorough knowledge about that. So till such time, of course, there is an option given that the valuer has to follow the internationally accepted valuation standards. So IVS is there, so that perhaps IVS one has to follow. Till such time, there are Indian standards out there. There is Annexure 1, which talks about model code of conduct for the registered valuers. So there is a code of conduct, just like any professional institute has is the provisions regarding the code of conduct. So there are provisions regarding the code of conduct of the registered valuers. The rules describe the code of conduct for the registered valuer, and this is similar on the lines of what we are having as a professional institute. But this code of conduct is strictly followed by the IBBA, and you will see there are a lot of in just 2 years old profession, but you will see there are a lot of cases of the expulsion from the membership, or there are some penalty fines which are being levied. So one has to be very careful, because this government is monitoring this professional very closely, because based on the value the decisions are being taken, the loans have been sanctioned, and if there is something goes wrong, so there are provisions which call for the penalties, not only to refund the fees, but also there could be hefty penalties for the registered valuers. So one has to be very careful about the code of conduct. The methods of valuation, again, this is a separate topic altogether. So, but just to give the hint that what it is. So there are three main types of approach. One is the asset-based approach, second is the income-based approach, and third one is the market approach. So for example, if you are going by the asset approach, so typically you can go by the method that is this NAV, the net asset value method. So under this, the valuation of the assets of the company is being done. Rather, the assets of the company denotes the value of the company. That is what is being the approach under this method. Typically, if the company is not a going concern, such kind of, or under liquidation, such type of approach is being followed. Then sum of part valuation. So in this method, you have to take the parts or the divisions, and based on that you can do the valuation based on the asset value and take the sum total of that. Or liquidation value. So it's if the company or entity goes under liquidation, what value it will fetch. So that is what is called as a liquidation value. Under market approach, there is a market price method. So what you can do is that you can go, if the company is a listed company, there is a market price which is available, so which you can utilize in order to get the valuation. Similarly, there is a comparable companies multiple method. So if your company is not listed but similar company is listed, so you can use the multiple. So here we know that PE multiples or some other revenue multiples, so which can be used if you are going under the market method. Comparable transaction multiple method, so which is similar to the company's multiple method. The only difference is that here the transaction is being tracked. So suppose there is a case of the merger, and in merger, suppose there is a similar merger happening some days back. So what you can do is that you can use the transaction multiple of the transactions, do certain adjustment in order to make it comparable, and then you can value it. Then the price of the PRI, this price of recent investment, there is one more method. Income method, the PECV, the price earning capitalization value method. So you can capitalize your earnings to get the valuation. DCF, which is the most practiced, that discounted cash flows. So under this method, you forecast the future cash flows and do discounting in order to get the net present value. And as of today, and you can do the valuation. Weighted average method, you can do a weighted average of this, or there is an option that you can use any of these approaches and do averaging or weighted averaging in order to make your valuation more realistic. So this valuation approaches, these are to be generally defined by the registered valuer in order to have the proper valuation done. For example, if a company is under liquidation, there is no point in going by the market approach or the income approach, because it's very clear that this approach is you have to go by the asset approach. Rather, this NAV method will be more appropriate. So that which approach or which method to use, that is up to the discretion of the valuer. And this you have to consider and keep in mind, there are certain valuation standards. So this valuation and standards define that what kind of approach would be more suitable for a particular situations. or any other method which is accepted or notified by the regulator like RBI or SEBI or income tax authorities. So these are the some of the methods which can be considered by the registered valuers. Contents of the valuation report: the name and address of the valuer, the registration number. Do you remember that earlier days you see that there were certain chartered engineers or government approved valuers or certified valuers. So these were there was a valuers under the tax. Now, if you are talking about registration number, kindly make sure that you are referring to the IBBR registration number, because the registration number of that particular uh, organization could be different. So one has to look at this, what is the IBBI registration number. And in fact, IBBI website also discloses that the registered number or registration values on their link. So you can just check that value is particularly a registered value or not. Description and of the valuation engagement, you have to give the name of the client or any other intended user. Sometimes it happens that client and user could be different. Suppose a company is approaching you for the valuation report for the financing. So in that cases, the intended user could be a bank, which could be different than your name of the client. So that you have to write in your valuation report. Most importantly, the purpose of the valuations. So the purpose is very important because the purpose drives you the valuation. Suppose I am doing the valuation for the purpose of, suppose I am doing the simple case inventory valuations for the purpose of suppose income tax. And suppose I am doing the inventory valuation for the purpose of giving it to the bank. So you will understand that this purpose can drive the valuation. And that is why it's very important that you should write this purpose clearly in your valuation report. Description of the business assets, liabilities to be valued, nature of the business asset. Hello.
Please continue.
Yeah, sorry, there was some interruption. Legal background, the financial aspects and tax matters. Then description of the information underlying valuation, very importantly, analysis of past results, budgets with the underlying assumptions, statement of responsibilities, availability and quality of the underlying data. Very important that not only just you have to have the information available, but what is the credibility of the numbers or what is the quality of that data, that is also very important and that you have to comment upon. So as a registered valuer, suppose there is a forecast which is given to me. So it is up to me to decide that whether that forecast is really reflects the stories. And if it's not so, I can choose not to use it, or I can do a certain discounting which to my mind would be more appropriate in order to ensure the credibility of the data. So it's very important that you should not just you cannot put a disclaimer like data as certified by management. In fact, this valuation rules, there is a clause which say that the valuer cannot limit or cannot disclaim his liability. So you cannot do any disclaimers. You can do a disclaimer, but that will not limit your liability. So you cannot just go plainly based on the data or information as may be given by the company or the management. So you have to test in order to ensure that this is in line and this valuation will hold good in the times to come. The review of the budgets, that also you can put it that what is the past trends, what were the kind of estimates and what is the reality, so that can give you kind of credentials how this numbers looks good. The description of the basis of the value, very importantly, valuation date. You have to put in your report what is your valuation date. So the report stands valid as on that particular date. Okay. So it may be possible that valuation date and report date could be different. That is very much possible. But the valuation report date will be the date of release of report, whereas valuation date is the date on which you have done the valuation. For example, if I'm doing the valuation of a company on 31st of March, and I release the report on say 30th of April. So I have to disclose that in my valuation report very clearly. Then you have to also define the procedures carried out, the principles used, the valuation methods used, and reasoning. Very importantly, you have to disclose in your report which method you have used and why you have used. And also you have to narrate a reason that if a particular method is there, but why you have not used. So that also you have to give in your valuation report. Nature, scope, and quality of underlying data and extent of estimates that you have to disclose. confirmation for the valuation is as per rules. You have to give a confirmation that it is confirming the relevant conditions, regulations, rules, and notifications issued by the government from time to time. And benchmarking with the previous valuation done. If in case the valuer has been involved in the valuing the any part of the subject matter of valuation in past, the past valuation report should be attached and referred to. In case a different basis has been adopted, then the adopted what was the basis adopted in the past and what is the deviation, we have to give in your report, and also justify the reasons for changing such methods or the reasons thereof. So that is how the valuation report should be. You have to prepare this report, and also in your report you have to disclose if you are having any relationship with the company. The valuer has to be always independent. If you are not independent, then perhaps you are not in the position to do a fair value of the business. So in that case, you have to give your disclaimers as regards to your independence, and you are nowhere connected, or there would be any past connection with the company that you have to disclose. So just to sum up, that professionals to become the valuer, we have already studied in our curriculum the strategy management and business valuations. So this perhaps is a part of our curriculum. We have studied it, so that gives the good opportunity for us. The directorate of the advanced studies also, we have conducted certain the advanced courses are available on this business valuation and the corporate restructuring. The CMA, CS and CAs are recognized to become the registered valuer for the asset class, securities or financial assets. So we are recognized to become the registered valuer. Just you have to do the training and pass the examination, and then you can enroll yourself as a registered valuer. So there is a quick or the fast route available in order to professionals to become the valuers. And with a good mix of the operational and business, and also having the good command over commercials or financial expertise, the professionals are having the edge in this evolving professions. And we are also very much aware about the legal background and Companies Act and under different statutes. So that will give definitely edge for us to become the registered valuer. So the professionals can appear for this limited examination and take the benefits of this new emerging opportunity. Okay, so with this, I just open up this session for this question and answers. So I will. So any questions, Virag? Can you just because I'm not able to see these questions. Okay. Thank you. Oh, I got. Okay. Let me start with this question. Eligibility 3 years or 5 years? That I already replied. Graduate, it's 3 years. Postgraduate, 5 years. How does one who is working under 9 to 7 take the training under RVO? Yes, the training sessions are there. As of now, also online training is we can do it. And there are certain courses which are also available on the weekends. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like this, the batches are there. So you can take the benefit and you can complete this course. So whether a chartered accountant can I apply for the registered valuer? Yes, the code of conduct allows professionals to practice in addition to what they're practicing. So CA also can become the registered valuer. So like me, I'm a cost accountant but practicing, but still I can become the registered valuer. So you have to wait for 3 years. Yes, you have to wait for 3 years. But in the meantime, what you can do is that you can do this study of your examination. So once you are eligible, you can appear for the examination. Yeah, CS, can you do this valuation courses? So the RVOs are open. RVOs are, one step above of all the professional organizations. So CA can approach the ICMA RVO and take the training. You can also approach PVI RVO. So it is not that one has to go by his own institute, but it depends upon the availability of the courses and also the fees and the faculties or the training material. So these are the more important than the institute. So RVO is just a training body. So what is more important is that who is giving you the better understanding of the subject. So age limit, as of now, no, there is no age limit. Books for examination, there are a lot of books. All the RVOs are having their materials which are available on the websites, so you can use that. There are a lot of books which are available on the Amazon or other platforms, so you can use this thing. RVOs, as I told you, that a lot of RVOs give books and materials, so that is very good and useful. CAs in job can do this. Yeah, good question. That experience, the experience need not to be experience only in practice, but the experience also can be in employment. So what you can do is that you can pass the examination and later on decide that you want to go for practice or not. But one thing is sure that once you decide that you have to be a registered valuer, then you have to be in full-time practice. So, but for the purpose of examination, your experience as a working or employment also will be considered. Experience means post membership experience. So any prior experience before your qualification will not be recognized. Number of registered valuers in India you can see on the IBBI website. So to my mind there are around 3,000 plus registered valuers, not more than that. So you can check this online on the IBBI website. So it is available. Validity of certificate, it's valid for 1 year. Every year you have to renew and you have to pay the fees to the IBBA and this RVO. So audited balance sheets. So first of all, let me clear that audited balance sheets are the reference point if you are doing the valuations. So that cannot be taken as a benchmark. In fact, the valuation starts with the financials. So financials has to be taken just as a basis. And I recollect I was attending a session of this Ashwath Damodaran, and he said that one of the greatest risk he has taken at one particular valuation was that he has adapted the book values. So that is the one of the biggest risk that a valuer can carry if he is just adapting the book value, because book value may or may not reflect the real story. So valuation back and all that, I think you can catch me offline. I will just let you know that presently which one are doing what. Then valuation for ESOP. Yes, so ESOP valuation also is a very good. A lot of companies do a lot of ESOP, so valuation has to be. The Company Act doesn't prescribe, but the SEBI rules, if there are companies listed, you have to get it done from the registered valuer. Whether to complete the mandatory training for the course, where to complete. So as I told at RVO, you can do this training, and it's mandatory training before you appear for the examination. So I think Virag, I have covered most of the questions. So if you are having anything I have missed out, you can just let me know.
Sir, one question from my side. Like many
Yeah.
people giving independent examination in this lockdown period, whether
Yeah.
this examination is possible, regulatory has allowed it anything that you can appear for few session and appear. Is it possible for professionals?
No,
Use this
as of
lockdown
now,
period basically.
this exam is basically computer-based examination, but under under examination center is there. You have to go to the examination center and appear. So there are no examination centers are available, and during this lockdown period, we will not be able. IBBI has also given on this website that all this examination slots were booked. They will be rescheduled. So it is not possible to have this examination during this lockdown period. But as I said that you can complete your training part.
Training part can be completed. And once
Yes,
lockdown
so
will be
RVO has
lifted,
offered
we
the
can enjoy exam.
online training. You can get it done. This 6 days training is there. Generally, it is a 6 days training, 9 hours a day. So you can utilize this time for this completing this training.
Yes. So obviously, I mean, many professionals will be benefited from our attendees also. Sir, we have a special attendee, CA Abhishek Shah. He is from Navi Mumbai branch of WRC of ICAI. he would like to address few of our participants. Abhishek, please.
So before I start, I have one question, sir.
Yes.
So question is that under which guidelines price of recent method is allowed? Under IPEV guideline 2018, I understand that this method cannot be used. So Harshal Ajmera is a branch committee member of Navi Mumbai. He has asked this question, sir.
Yes, some of the methods have listed that this may or may not be allowed under certain circumstances. So PRI is not being followed very much in recent times because it has got certain limitations. So in fact, some of the regulatory provisions they describe, for example, under income tax, if you are doing the valuations, so which are the methods which are being allowed, that is also being described under the law. So you have to follow that. So these methods I have given just you as a reference that these are the prevailing methods which were there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. So with this, I am concluding this seminar, or we are still having something, Virag?
No, sir. No, Abhishek. We don't have anything. Just we would like to request members to join our groups on social media. Also, they can follow
Yes.
us, and for further professional updates. And
Okay.
obviously, very value-added session by CMA Arshad Deshpande sir. It is a value enriching new opportunity for all the professional. For all three professionals, whether it is a CA, CMA, company secretary, because this is just around 2 years of this profession for registered valuer. So many members can become take the advantage of this. Sir, we are highly thank you, highly obliged to have in our session, and we are hoping for more session on this and many more subjects, as you are many highly qualified, sir. So many qualification you have, sir. So with this, yes, sir. Thank you so much. You would like to say something, sir?
Yes, thank you very much, Virag, for your nice words. And of course, anybody would like to have any help, just feel free to contact on my email or website, or you can also, some of the content what I have told is also available on my articles which are there on the CA Club India or taxguru.in. So you can, if anything is there, you can just refer back to my articles. In many of the articles, I have tried to answer this FAQs. So be in touch. You can use any of the social media to get in touch, LinkedIn or Twitter also.
Okay, sir.
That's what I want to.
Before we are closing, so I have shared one Telegram group link in this chat box. So I request all the members to please share with your professional friends. So currently around 6,900 members are there. So our target is that. So we want to achieve 10,000 number in that. So overall, we have already connected around 15,000 professional through Facebook, WhatsApp, and various other groups. So me and Virag Bhai both are very active in this social media networking, because somewhere I read in recent scenario our network is our net worth. So I request
Yes.
all the members to please join this group and ask your friend to please join with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Virag.
Thank you,
Thank
all
you,
of you. We
Abhishek.
are ending the webinar. Thank you so much, sir. We are ending webinar now.
Okay, thank you.